Halfling stealth force have made their way secretly under the cover of darkness into the Goblins' domain. However, that night, in the Halfling encampment, there was a little bit of ale flowing round, perhaps one too many pies were devoured, and in their eagerness and their excitement, around the campfire the Halflings began to dance and sing merrily. The following song was heard all throughout the lands.
Everyone loves a halfling, a halfling, a halfling. Everyone loves a halfling, do-do-do-do-do-do.
Of course, you can imagine the music was much louder than that when you take into account the sheer number of halflings contributing their vocal stylings to that, and that alerted the goblins to their presence, who have mobilised a swift response force to cut the halflings off in their tracks. So, both sides attempting to reach the other side, the halflings attempting to reach goblin lands, the goblins trying to reach the halfling encampment to put a stop to their invasion before it begins, which means, of course, that we have the invade scenario, both sides trying to get as many units as possible into the enemy half by the end of the game. We have the League of Rhordia versus the goblins, and let's go through the forces. On the side of the League of Rhordia, first of all, we have 2 troops of halfling scouts. Next to them, we have a regiment of militia. On the hill, we have 2 very similar looking war machines, but they are vastly different. One of them is in fact a volley gun, and the other is a halfling howitzer. We have a master engineer ready to lend his engineering expertise to the war machines. Next along, we have 2 more troops of halfling scouts, ready with their bows. We have Gordon War Snutter, the Duke on winged arrowless, so he's going to be flying about, causing untold carnage. Next we have a horde of city spear militia, and they have Blessing of the Gods, backed up by the mighty battle shrine, pulled by the prized member of the Halflings cattle, named Daisy, of course. Next along we have household knights, and you can tell with the banner that, of course, they have the potion of the caterpillar, so they're not going to be losing that thunderous charge too easily. Next along we have 2 units that may look very different, but they are both in fact house guard, and this one here, with the meat cleavers, they have the chant of hate. And finally, we have this tiny little block here, we have a troop of scouts and a sorcerer. And lurking behind the halfling lines, you can just see that Steve Allen inspired banner poking out. That's because we have an army standard there with the holy hand grenade. On the side of the goblins, we have a troop of fleabag riders, and right behind them, we have a flaget with the diadem of dragonkind. As we move along onto the hill, we have a sharp stick thrower and a whiz mounted on a fleabag with Scarlet Moor's Fernulian amulet. Next along, we have a horde of spitters. We have a horde of trolls. This one has the Blessing of the Gods. Behind them, there is a mincer. Next to them, there's a giant standing in the field. And as we continue, we have a horde of sharp sticks. By the way, the spitters have the heart-seeking chant. Behind the sharp sticks, we have a whiz with the inspiring talisman. He also has Bane chant. And moving along still, we have another giant. Another horde of trolls, this one with dwarven ale. We have a war trombone, a troll bruiser. We have a big rock thrower. And finally, all the way out on the flank, we have another troop of fleabag riders. So, we're going to have the roll off to see who's getting the choice of going first or second. Here we go. Oh, it's a 6 for the goblins and only a 3 for the halflings, so the goblins are going to have the choice. The goblins elected to allow the halflings to go first, and you can see there's been quite an advance. Most of the halfling units have moved up at least somewhat. The scouts, of course, not being hindered in their shooting efforts by moving because they're all nimble. And then, all the shooting from this side that managed to get in range took aim at the sharp stick thrower, and as a result of the 3 damage that was done to it, it's now been wavered. So that's not going to be firing back anytime soon. And as we swing off down here, less damage was inflicted, but you'll see that there are 2 damage here on the giant. But other than that, everything else is untouched. This side of the table, there's less shooting over here, but none of that really did anything. And just to confirm, the cavalry unit do have their leader point poking into the forest there. Goblin turn 1, and there's been a mixed advance. Over on this side, the small little flank force have made their way towards the halfling lines. Over here, the whiz moved up onto the hill, And then there's been mixed levels of advancement going on here. Some units have stayed back a little bit. This giant, in fact, is hiding from the cavalry behind the sharpsticks, inviting them to charge into a wall of spears, perhaps. And over here, the giant and the trolls are just inviting that advance forward, because the goblin forces do have the advantage of speed for most of these units around here. The trolls and the giants are fast, but not quite as fast as that unit there. Down here, the trolls and the troll bruiser are just poised behind the hedge, awaiting any potential cavalry charge. And over here, this unit of Fleabag Riders just facing down the halfling flank, waiting to see whether they can cause any disruption there. And in terms of shooting, a bit of damage was dished out when a big rock landed on these house guard and put 3 damage on them. Couldn't waver them. Over here there was a bit more significance to the damage though, because 1 troop of scouts was taken out. They're just gone from the goblin spitters. And over here, 2 damage was put onto this unit from a lightning bolt, and they've become wavered. So first blood has been spilt onto this battlefield, and the halflings aren't going to take kindly to that, so I imagine they're about to strike back with furious, hairy-footed vengeance. Midway through halfling turn 2, and we've already had some excitement and drama, so we've done all the movement and the shooting, and you can see the most notable moment here was when these cavalry here, the household knights, spotted that there was a tiny little gap to charge over here, and they've actually got a flank charge in on the trolls, which is very, very tasty, so they could butcher them in a minute. But then, the various shooting attacks, after the lines had advanced a little bit, did virtually nothing. There was a small amount of damage done over here onto the wizard on the hill. He took 4 damage, so he might be dead in a minute. Over here, 2 damage onto this unit, but other than that, nothing else was really dished out at all. So we're just going to do those nerve rolls and then we'll go into combat. As a result of the shooting nerve tests, these fleabags actually became wavered, which isn't very good for them. And then over here, this wizard didn't become wavered. And also, in case we didn't point it out before, the Duke, Gordon Warsnutter, flew all the way over here and is just staring down that wizard. He knows full well that the war trombone can target him next turn, but he decided to take the risk anyway. And over here you can see that the trolls were hideously wiped out by the household knights. They did a ton of damage, and they've now turned to face the giant. So potentially they can be flank charged by something, but they felt taking out those trolls was worth the risk. So it's going to be the goblin turn now, and there are lots of charge opportunities here. The halflings have moved completely into range. Goblin turn 2, movement and shooting, and you can see that a triple charge was declared onto this treacherous cavalry unit that so boldly took out the trolls. They've now been charged by 2 giants and a horde of sharpsticks, so they could be toast very shortly. Speaking of toast, there was quite a bit of shooting that went down, which we'll get to after I tell you that there was a double troll charged into this unit of house guards. So shooting-wise, you can see the other house guard unit was wavered. That's because they took a big rock to the face. And as we slide down here, you'll see that more damage was dished out. This unit of scouts took damage from a lightning bolt, and they also became wavered. And the halfling howitzer took 1 damage from the sharpstick thrower, but I couldn't quite roll enough to waver that, so the howitzer is still going to be shooting off next turn. Down here, the flagget with the diadem of dragonkind sent his fiery breath in the direction of the militia. 3 damage was dealt, and they also became wavered. So it's just waver central all across the table here. I think the halflings would take a waver in this situation now with this triple charge, but I don't think it's going to go quite that well for them. Combat coming up. So in the goblin turn 2 combat phase, you can see that the double hindered troll charge, because of this hedge, that hindrance was enough to not do quite enough damage to get rid of the house guard. So with the assistance of the Steve Allen banner and its inspiring effects, they were only wavered now. So that's held up the troll advance a little bit. The same can't be said for the cavalry unit here, which did the halflings proud, really. They took out the trolls, and then they just got smushed from all sides. They took 1 billion damage, and they were hoping for double ones, and that hope just never came to fruition. They're toasted, but that's opened up some nice avenues for charges, maybe for the halflings as well, with this unit in a minute. So, a bit of an overview of the battlefield here. A bit of a long-range view. You can see that the majority of the fighting has been taking place roughly along the centre line, so no one's got the clear advantage as far as the invade scenario goes at the moment. But on the just fighting standpoint, the goblins have killed slightly more at this stage. Halfling turn 3, movement and shooting. So you can see down here that Gordon Warsnutter, the Duke, has repositioned himself to threaten the rear of all these units here. So they're going to have to do something or face his furious rear charge, which he's well known for in the Halfling community. Over here you can see that this unit was wavered again, after taking a further 2 damage. So they're not going to be fleabagging anyone anytime soon. And as we move over here you can see the Giant's been charged, which we're going to get to shortly. And then over here, this troll unit here took damage from the Holy Hand Grenade, wielded by the Steve Allen banner carrier, and then they were also wind blasted away 5 inches. So I'm not sure that's going to help much, but at least it's funny. And other than that, not much. There was a bit of damage dished out to the Giant and the Sharp Sticks in the middle from various shooting attacks, and 2 damage over here to these fleabags, but no one else was wavered or removed. So we're going to move into the combat phase, and it's just this big fight here between the Spearman and the Giant. Goblin turn 3 so far. We've had all the movement and shooting. You can see from this lovely wide angle that the Goblins are slowly invading their way across the battlefield, as the scenario suggests. And it's not looking that great for the Halflings at this stage. So damage was inflicted from the Goblins, but we'll get to that shortly, because first of all, there was a triple charge here, including a mincer into the front. It's not ideal charging a mincer into Spearmen, but needs must when the devil vomits into your kettle. Over here, these Sharp Sticks charged into the Battle Shrine, and over here there was a lot of charging as well, with the Trolls into the House Guard and the Troll Bruiser, and the Fleabags into the other House Guard. So, damage that was dished out. All the shooting damage, much of it was directed onto the Duke, Mr. Gordon Warsnutter. He's up to 6, but couldn't quite waver him. However, the same can't be said down here, where this unit was wavered. So the militia having a waver showdown against the Fleabags there, and you may notice that there are no scouts on the hill at all now. That's because that unit was taken out after a big rock smashed into them and obliterated them utterly. So we're going into the combat phase now, and we could see a lot of dead Halflings after this. Well, the combat phase of Goblin turn 3, and you can see that damage was dished out from these 3 beastly monstrosities into the militia. Only 9 damage though, so it wasn't enough to remove them. And over here, the Sharp Sticks into the Battle Shrine, they were unable to inflict 2 damage, so that's going to live to fight another day. The same can't be said for the 2 units of House Guard, who were mercilessly butchered by the Trolls and the Fleabags over here. So this side of the table is not looking very Halfling filled at the moment, but they do have a couple of individuals running around there, including the Holy Hand Grenade toting, Steve Allen banner carrying Army Standard Bearer. This side's looking a little bit healthier, but not by a lot. So going into the Halfling turn 4, and they need a big turnaround right now. Halfling movement and shooting in turn 4. So as far as movement goes, the main news is over here around this difficult piece of terrain. So the militia countercharged the Giant in the centre. Over here, Duke Gordon Warsnutter rear-charged the mincer, and then there was a lot of shooting attacks being thrown around, and as a result of that over here, the Fleabag unit is dead, and the same can be said for the Fleabag unit all the way on this flank as well, who were killed off by a Holy Hand Grenade from the Steve Allen carrier. And then in the centre, this Giant took lots of damage from War Machine shots, and he is actually wavered as a result of that, so he's not going to be able to do much next turn. It's about to be the Halfling combat phase, and if they were to kill these 2 units here, suddenly it wouldn't be looking quite so dreadful in Halfling land. Well, this area has been cleared of a bit of Goblin menace, because the mincer was butchered from behind by Gordon Warsnutter, who is now staring menacingly towards the rear of that Giant. The Giant who just saw his wife mown down mercilessly by the militia. Just lots of tiny spears poking away at the kneecaps, and the accumulative blood loss was too much to handle, so she's gone. And it's going to be the Goblin turn 4 now, and it's not looking quite so rosy in the middle anymore. That Duke has really turned the tide a little bit with his rear-charging antics. So we'll see what the Goblins can do to counteract this, because of course this Giant in the middle's wavered, so he's not going to be able to help out right now. Movement and shooting for the Goblins turn 4, and you can see that this small unit of militia has been removed. That's because the Diadem of Dragonkind from the Flaggit on the hill toasted them lightly, so they're gone. The big unit of militia is also gone, and that was as a result of the Spitters here and also the War Trombone took aim at them. So they took a bit more damage, and I had to roll 8 twice to remove them. Just managed it, So they are gone. There was also damage inflicted to the Duke, the game-changing Gordon Warsnutter. He's now on 7 damage, and he was wavered as a result of that. So that's bad news for him, because that means he's not going to be able to recharge the giant in the next turn. Other than that, there were 2 charges declared over here. The sharp sticks went into the battle shrine again, and over in the corner, the troll bruiser has charged into the scouts. While these trolls, now safely in the opposing half, have turned to face in this direction to affect the battle a bit more. So combat phase coming up. So in the combat phase, the battle shrine took a couple more points of damage, but still can't get rid of that thing. And over here, the scouts took 3 damage from the bruiser, and they have become wavered. They're so terrified of this troll with huge balls on his hands that they're not going to be able to do very much next turn. So in the Halfling turn 5, which is coming up now, we know that the Duke won't be able to charge anybody. So other than that, they've just got a lot of shooting to throw out, and hope that they can do some serious damage here, because it's not looking too friendly for the Halflings at the moment. Movement and shooting in Halfling turn 5, and you may notice that there is a dead giant. That's because he was hit from all sides by all manner of shooting attacks. There were all kinds of artillery shots coming his way, and as a result of that, he is now dead. Over here, the sharp stick thrower took some shooting damage, but that actually survived the nerve, so it's not too terrified because it's got the flagget right there next to it. Over here, Steve Allen couldn't quite hit with his holy hand grenade, but it didn't matter in the end anyway. And over here, the scouts are still wavered, so they can't do anything, but this sorcerer is hiding behind a hill for some reason, because he only has Wind Blast right now, so he's feeling a little bit vulnerable, and he just wants to go and sit behind that hill, I think, and ride out the rest of the game. Maybe use his Wind Blast in the last turn to chop somebody out of their half, perhaps. There were no charges declared in this turn, so that's going to be it. We're going to go into the Goblin turn 5 now. So, it's not completely decided yet, but it is looking slightly in the Goblin's favour right now. If we look at the nice wide shot, you can see there's a lot more white than there is the green of the Halflings. Movement and shooting for Goblins turn 5, and the League of Rhordian Halflings are just hanging in there at the moment. You can see here that this breath attack put damage onto this scout unit, and they've become wavered. You can see here that the howitzer is dead. That was as a result of some pinpoint precision sharp stick throwing from this War Machine. So War Machine on War Machine crime, and the Halflings come out with the worst of it there. As we move down, over here, the Duke, Gordon Warsnutter, he took a ton more damage, but due to a terrible nerve roll, he's actually better off than he was before. He's feeling just really good about life at the moment, ready to just charge off and hit someone in the rear probably in a minute. Over here, the Steve Allen carrier took 2 damage from a lightning bolt, but he doesn't really care about that. Over here, there's a charge that was declared here, the sharp sticks into the battle shrine, and the troll bruiser is going to attempt to finish off those scouts. So in the combat phase, if both those go to plan, then it's all looking quite rosy, but if it doesn't, then there's potential for Gordon Warsnutter to swing the game by charging into the rear of one of these units, because there's still a fair bit of Halfling shooting action left. Combat phase, and yet again 2 damage was inflicted to the battle shrine, but couldn't remove it, so it's still causing a bit of a roadblock there. However, the troll bruiser was able to free up his own little roadblock of scouts here by just mashing them into a bloody pulp. So that flank is now free of Halflings, other than this sorcerer who's just running around threatening to wind blast people later on. And it's going to be potentially the last Halfling turn now. So we'll see if they've got anything up their sleeve, because it's not looking too rosy at the moment. Halfling movement and shooting has been completed. So as far as movement went, the Engineer and Duke Gordon Warsnutter have double charged the Spitters to stop them getting any further. So I'm not sure the Engineer's going to actually add much to that combat, but he will stop them going forwards, possibly. Over here, the sharp sticks took some shooting damage, but they don't really care about that. It probably just hit rancid old Jim at the back, so they don't really mind that too much. And apart from that, you'll notice that the sharp stick thrower has been killed. That's because it took lots of arrows to the face of the crew, and it's now dead. And finally, in the highlight of the turn so far, all the way over here, the sorcerer put himself in position to wind blast. For some reason, decided to wind blast the big rock thrower, and it successfully travelled 1 inch towards the table edge. So, big achievement there for the sorcerer. He can be very proud of himself. He can go home and get an extra portion of Halfling pie tonight, I'm sure. Not that the pie contains Halflings, just that it's their speciality, of course. No cannibalism in the Halfling village that we know of. Although their song is Everyone Loves a Halfling, so maybe that includes that they love the taste of their own flesh. Well, Duke Warsnutter did an admirable job there, inflicting 13 damage in his rear assault, but he could only waver the Spitters because the Engineer just couldn't chip in with that extra 1 damage that would have tipped them over the edge. So they are going to be wavered, but they're surviving, which is the important thing. So potentially the last Goblin turn coming up now. Let's see if we can finally be rid of this infernal contraption. Goblin turn 6. So the various shooting attacks from the Wizards, the Flaggit and the War Trombone all converged behind Gordon Warsnutter, and he just took massive damage. So that was probably enough to kill him. But then the big rock thrower thought, you know what, I've just been wind blasted. I'm going to pull off a tricky manoeuvre whilst skidding along in the grass. I'm going to fire a rock right onto Gordon's head. And it landed, and it just knocked his head clean off. There was no way he was going to survive that. The moral crushing of just taking a decapitation mid-battle, not many people can bounce back from that, and Gordon is no exception, so he's gone. However, in the middle, with the Sharpsticks charging into the battle shrine again, they still couldn't get rid of it. It's up to 7 damage now, but no. So apart from that, not much else. So at the moment, the Goblins are in the lead because the Halflings have only 1 scoring unit, a troop of scouts in the Goblin half, whereas the Goblins have the Bruiser and the horde of trolls over in the Halfling half, which means it's 4-1. So on the roll of 1, 2 or 3, the game will be over and it'll be a Goblin victory, but it's not! We're going to have turn 7, so the Halflings are still in it. They've got 1 more turn to turn it round. Here we go. Halfling turn 7, and it was a mixed bag really, because you can see more damage was applied to the Spitters, but then the classic double 1 came up, so they're completely fine, they don't care one bit, and they can just have a charge of him in a minute if they like. The Engineer M&M. Over here, the Sharpsticks are dead though. They took shooting attacks from the volley gun mainly, and that was enough to finish them off, so they're gone. Over here, it was all about the trolls though, because we determined that the Halflings really needed to kill these trolls to have a chance of getting anything out of this game. So the Fireball and also the Holy Hand Grenade were both thrown in their direction, only 4 damage overall though, and then not enough to even waver them, unfortunately. So they're alive. And then we decided to break the laws of the game to allow this sorcerer to actually accomplish something, and he wind blasted illegally against the rock thrower and nudged it a few inches into a better position for shooting, probably. So I'm not sure that benefited the Halflings at all, breaking that particular rule. And going into the Goblin final turn now, we'll see what they can finish off. Well, the final Goblin turn saw the end of the battle shrine. All the shooting attacks from down here converged on him, and he's gone. The big rock thrower couldn't land a rock directly on Steve Allen, unfortunately. And over here, the Spitters put 1 damage on the Engineer, but couldn't charge their way past him, surprisingly enough, since they're archers. So, the final score, the Halflings have 2 troops in the Goblin half that are worth 1 each, and the Goblins have a horde of trolls worth 3 and the Troll Bruiser worth 1, so it's a 4-2 win for the Goblins. So that means that the Goblins have successfully infiltrated the Halfling camp, so that campfire with all the dancing going on and the raucous singing long into the night has come back to haunt the Halflings, and maybe next time they'll think about eating 1 few pies perhaps, downing a few less pints of ale, because that alerting the Goblins to their presence has not gone well for them at all. Their camp is shortly going to be ransacked, possibly beyond repair, but who knows, maybe next time we'll actually play out that scenario where the Goblins attempt to ransack the Halfling village